Good afternoon. We're bringing today's Appropriations Subcommittee for Education and Economic Development to order. We will have three budget hearings today. We will be starting a bit out of order. We'll begin with MSDE funding for educational operations. And first, we'll begin with a presentation from our budget analyst, Laura Hyde.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name is Laura Hyde, presenting the Funding for Educational Organizations budget analysis. We're starting on page 1 with the operating budget summary. So funding for educational organizations budget decreases by $9.4 million or 15% to $51.2 million. Of this amount, $3.4 million is general funds for state aided institutions and $6 million is special and federal funds for the Aid to Non-Public Schools program. Turning to page 4. This is Exhibit 1. This is under Managing for Results. So this exhibit shows that Maryland School for the Blind's post-graduation outcomes, which is a different measure than shown in the past because MSB is revising this measure, their measures of academic and independent living skills. This measure actually shows post-graduation achievement from fiscal 2019 to 2023. So in fiscal 2019 and 2020, post-graduation achievement was low at 20%, but then starting in fiscal 21, post-pandemic employment opportunities improved. And so from fiscal 2022 to 2023, students entering school or training increased by 8 percentage points and graduates employed increased by 4 percentage points. The bold language on page 4 asks MSB to comment on the reason for the update in the school's achievement measures and provide additional information on how the school assists students with post-graduation opportunities. Turning to page 5, Exhibit 2. This is another performance measure for Blind Industries and Services of Maryland. So this exhibit shows that from fiscal 2022 to 2023, BISM increased training by 2,464 hours, or 6%, which returns the agency to pre-pandemic levels and exceeds their Managing for Results goal. For achievement of independent living goals, 92% of BISM participants were successful in this measure in fiscal 2023, which is 1 percentage point higher than fiscal 2022. Turning to page 6, Exhibit 3. This is Maryland School for the Blind Federal Stimulus Fund expenditures. This exhibit shows that as of February 2024, Maryland School for the Blind reports spending approximately $900,000 or 99% of their federal stimulus funding on educational technology, school operations, and cleaning supplies. Then turning to page 7, Exhibit 4. This exhibit shows the distribution of American Rescue Plan EANS grants in fiscal 2023. Out of $13.8 million in grant funds, $8 million was allocated for educational technology and remote learning. $4.1 million was allocated for COVID-19 supplies and testing, and approximately $1.5 million was allocated for safety and ventilation equipment. There was also $200,000 retained by Maryland State Department of Education for allowable administrative expenses. But due to grant rules limiting eligible expenditures to pandemic-related purchases and the number of non-public schools that could meet those conditions, at the close of fiscal 2023, the remaining $25 million in ARPA EANS funds were canceled. Turning to page 9, this is Exhibit 5. This exhibit shows the non-public school health and security program. These are their grant allocations, which received $2.5 million as part of legislative priorities in the fiscal 2024 budget. As of December 2023, 142 non-public schools requested a total of $2.1 million, of which half has now been distributed. The grant window has closed and MSDE expects to cancel approximately $400,000 in unallocated funds to the Aid to Non-Public Schools program. The bold language at the top of page 10 asks MSDE to comment on the reason that non-public schools have not utilized all grant funds and whether unallocated funds are likely to be used in fiscal 2024 as part of the grants for the Aid to Non-Public Schools program. Now turning to page 10, this starts with Exhibit 6. This shows that the funding for educational organizations budget is approximately $51 million, of which $36 million or 71% is general funds for state aided institutions, BISM, and Maryland School for the Blind, and $15 million or 29% is special funds for the Aid to Non-Public Schools program and Boost. Exhibit 7 on page 11 And then also Exhibit 8 on page 12 shows the breakout of these allowances by fund type in the fiscal 2025 budget. Turning to page 13, Exhibit 9. This shows the proposed budget with the $9.3 million in changes from fiscal 2024 to 2025, which includes the $2.5 million decrease for one-time funding of the non-public school health and security program, $3.4 million for one-time funding for state-aided institutions, and then $3.5 million in federal stimulus funding for non-public schools. Turning to page 14, the next three exhibits focus on Maryland School for the Blind revenues and expenditures. Exhibit 10 on page 14 shows MSB's actual and projected enrollment, which for the purposes of formula funding in fiscal 2025 is 383 students. In a calendar 2023 audit of the school's enrollment, Maryland School for the Blind discovered data missing in its monthly count of outreach students for fiscal 2022. So committee narrative in the 2023 JCR requested a report on MSB's enrollment with information on updated procedures for counting outreach students, as well as the inclusion of MSB's enrollment data in fiscal 2025. The bold language at the bottom of page 14 asks the school to comment how it is ensuring accurate enrollment counts and the submission of these data in the fiscal 2025 managing for results measure. Exhibit 11 on page 15 shows Maryland School for the Blind's revenues and expenditures from fiscal 2021 to 2025, which indicates although the school shows a positive cash balance of approximately $17 million, which includes prior year cash balances, the school is running a slight structural deficit in fiscal 2025 of less than $100,000. Exhibit 12 on page 16, this shows Maryland School for the Blind spending by category, which indicates that the school continues to realize steady increases in personnel costs with almost $7 million or 24% increase since fiscal 2023. And then turning to page 18, this is exhibit 13. This exhibit shows the allocations for state-aided institutions in fiscal 2024 and 25, with all grantees receiving level funded awards, except for organizations that received one-time or enhanced funding through Section 19 in the fiscal 2024 budget bill. The next section covers the one issue in this analysis, which is in regard to the BOOST program. Starting on page 20 with exhibit 14, this chart shows that the BOOST program received $9 million in fiscal 2024, with awards totaling $8.6 million and a remaining fund balance for fiscal 2025 of approximately $500,000. Turning to page 22, exhibit 15. This shows the breakout of that $8.6 million in student awards, of which $6.9 million was awarded to students who qualified for free or reduced price meals in either private or public schools. $600,000 was awards to special education students, and $1.9 million was additional awards to high school students. Turning to page 23, this is exhibit 15, shows the breakout of the, I got lost, sorry. So we are on page 23, exhibit 16. So this shows BOOST and non-BOOST student proficiency by assessment type, with the BOOST students scoring an average of 7 percentage points lower on all assessments than their non-BOOST peers. And then the related exhibit on page 24, exhibit 17, shows the same information by subject area, with BOOST students scoring 11 percentage points lower in English language arts and 8 percentage points lower in math and 1 percentage point higher in science. The bold language on the bottom of page 24 asked MSD to comment on why special education awards did not meet the $700,000 legislative directive in the fiscal 2024 budget bill, why high school students earned an additional award when that was not a program requirement in the 2023-2024 school year, and the efforts of BOOST schools to close the gap between BOOST and non-BOOST students on standardized assessments. Page 25 starts the 4 recommended actions for this budget, all of which restore the language for the aid to non-public schools and BOOST programs for the fiscal 2020 from the fiscal 2024 budget, including the requested report on BOOST. This concludes my presentation, and I stand for questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hyde, for that excellent presentation. Are there any questions for our analysts? Delegate Grice.
Just one. So when we're comparing the standardized testing scores for the boost students compared to their peers, are their peers the other non-public students, or are they all the students, both in public and non-public?
So the test scores are only in the boost schools. So it's the boost students taking those tests within the non-public schools.
Okay, so we're comparing the other. Okay,
Mhm.
very good. Thank you.
Any other questions for our analysts? Seeing none, thank you so much. At this time, we'll hear from State Superintendent Carrie Wright and her team.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Carrie Wright, Interim State Superintendent for Schools. With me is Krishna Tulur, who is the Deputy State Superintendent for Operations and Finance. And unfortunately, Donna Gunning was supposed to be here, but she has been home ill with the flu for several days now. I want to thank you all very much for your commitment to education. And I also want to thank you for all the hard work that you do. I know that your days are long, and I appreciate the fact that you are so focused on making sure that we are doing what we need to be doing for the children of Maryland. I want to share some news about the impact of the state-aided institutions on public schools across the state. The SAIs play a crucial role in collaborating with schools and teachers to extend learning beyond classrooms, bringing curriculum to life through student field trips. During the FY23 year, approximately 350,000 students and 38,000 educators directly benefited from an SAI program. Funding for the program supports free and reduced admission costs, as well as access to hands-on educational experiences that are aligned with the state's content standards. Specifically, there are 6 programs supporting English language arts, 14 programs supporting fine arts, 18 supporting environmental education, and 6 supporting either STEAM or STEM. There are additional programs that focus on law, history, college and career readiness, and 2 that specifically provide services for students with disabilities. Since I know how important financial literacy is to some of the members, I'd like to share an experience that the Junior Achievement Program provides to 5th and 8th grade students. This program is a hands-on interactive life experience where students begin with an assigned role in the world. That includes a marital status, a family status, and a career. And they start with a set amount of money, and they move through life with the task of paying all their bills, encountering various life experiences, and still maintaining some savings at the end of the game. At the end of the experience, students realize that they could have made different choices to ensure a positive outcome, but this experience has garnered support from students, teachers, and parents who all have incredibly positive things to say about the program. I also want to thank Laura Hyde again. Thank you, Laura, for your very thorough review of our department's funding for educational operations, speak to me, Carrie. This has been a busy day. For our department's funding of educational organizational budget. Thanks, Laura. And I'd also like to let you know that the Maryland School for the Blind and the Blind Industries and Services of Maryland will be presenting their responses to the committee separately. So I'm going to turn this over to Krishna to review the department's response to your analysis.
Thank you, Superintendent. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Krishna Tulur, Deputy State Superintendent for Finance and Operations. Our full response has been submitted to the analysts, and we are going to go over some of the highlights. MSDE was asked to comment on the reason that non-public schools have not utilized all grant funds and whether unallocated funds are likely to be used in fiscal 2024 as part of grants for the Aid to Non-Public Schools program. Approximately $406,000 in available funds were shifted to non-public textbook and technology program and are currently being used by eligible schools. These funds were eligible after the 142 schools out of 171 eligible schools obligated $2.1 million to support school nurses and other health services and school security. The department is currently implementing the grant program for the $3.5 million for non-public schools to support their needs related to COVID-19 pandemic. Department expects the schools to fully utilize these funds by the end of summer 2024. MSD was also asked to address specific requests from DLS related to the BOOST program. These are special education awards, high school adjustments, and performance gaps between BOOST and non-BOOST students. There were not enough eligible students with disabilities to utilize the entire $700,000 in allocation, despite an additional $750 allotment for all special education students. Next, the BOOST board determined that a high school adjustment was necessary for high school students. And finally, department does not address performance gaps with the non-public schools. Department also concurs with the analyst's recommendation on budget actions. With that, department's testimony concludes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. And I do want to say, we know you work a lot of hours outside of here too. So thank you to everything you and your team are doing. Are there any questions for Superintendent Wright? Oh, Delegate Grace.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a follow-up to my previous question, is there any data that will compare the standardized testing scores for our BOOST students compared to where they would have gone if they would have gone to public school? And the reason why I asked the question, because that would seem to be a better set of data, mainly because these students aren't a good fit for, at least from their perspective, they're not a good fit for their public school. And that's the reason why they're going through the BOOST program. So is there any data that will compare their public school where they've gone than those students compared to the BOOST students?
We need to get that data for you, but we'll check.
Yeah, okay, very good, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we'll move on to our other witnesses. All witnesses are favorable. The next witness I'd like to call, I'll call several, is Laura Nicolini here. Laura Nicolini. Okay. Is anyone here from Best Buddies? Oh, they're not, okay. Shelley McCulley and Todd Reynolds. The AFT of it. Oh, and Richard Ballard.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Todd Reynolds. I am the political coordinator for the American Federation of Teachers in Maryland. We are the state organization for a number of public employees and education employees in the state, including the faculty and staff at the Maryland School for the Deaf, the state's public school that educates deaf and hard of hearing students from every corner of the state. We are here today to ask for a $3 million reduction in the BOOST program, and that money be given instead to the Maryland School for the Deaf, the public school, to help convert contractual educators to full-time permanent positions. We've submitted written testimony. I have two educators here today who can talk some more about the school. But briefly, I can just give some remarks. So the Maryland School for the Deaf is a public school. It's also a state agency, and as such, it draws its funding almost exclusively from the state's general fund, not the Blueprint Fund. The public school educates K-12 students who are deaf from every corner of the state, as I mentioned, and provides vital education to the student population, all of whom are on IEPs. And this includes large numbers from Baltimore County, Baltimore City, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel County, Frederick County, but also places like Cecil, Queen Anne, Kents County. It provides language immersion experience for students and their families, so they may learn ASL and be able to communicate with the world, understand the world that surrounds them, and express themselves. As a state agency, it shares issues regarding staffing that other state agencies have. In lean budget years, steps that K-12 teachers would get at county schools get frozen at the School for the Deaf. Many of our most experienced teachers are 8+ steps behind the county school systems. And the school is constantly at risk of losing these most experienced educators to those county systems. But also as a state agency, there's a high reliance on contractual employees to do education work. This is almost unheard of in our public school counterparts, county counterparts, and we know it has a negative effect on student outcomes. When educators are not supported as they should be, a student's education suffers. This year alone, 27% of the educational workforce is contractual, working year to year, contract to contract. No other public school system in the district has, or the state has this problem. Fortunately, the new administration at DBM and the school has a new superintendent, have recognized this. So the fiscal year 25 budget did convert 20 education positions from contractual to permanent full-time, but that still leaves roughly 40 educators who are contractual. So with this, the voucher program, we have an example of public dollars going to a private school when a public school, which we believe is not funded appropriately, should get that funding. We calculate by moving just $3 million from the Boost program to the Maryland School for the Deaf, with the express purpose of converting roughly another 30 contractual employees to full-time positions would be a better use of this dollars. And I have Shelley McCulley and Rick Ballard here from the school who can talk about that.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith and members of the House and the Economic Development Subcommittee. My name is Shelley McCulley, and I work in the middle school as a teacher that services deaf individuals as well as those individuals who have varying disabilities. The Maryland School for the Deaf at the Columbia campus, that is where I work. Most of our faculty and staff at MSD we have our certified union staff at MSD. Like Todd mentioned, we are a state agency. And we are also a K-12 public school that educates deaf students all over the state of Maryland. We are calling for a favorable with amendment report for this budget item and asking that we add $3 million to the state fund from the booster voucher program. And that would give our state public school, MSD, the purpose of converting those full-time contractual teachers to become permanent full-time positions. Many of them have been in contracts for over 4 years, and so we would like them to have the permanent position. I have submitted my written testimony, but to just go over some highlights and discuss some things that shows why it's important to have these permanent and non-contractual statuses for our teachers. If we get that $3 million that was for the booster voucher program that our students are not able to attend, that $3 million can go to the educators at our public school who are deaf and hard of hearing and educate those who are deaf and hard of hearing. And like Todd mentioned, we have a high number of educators that are currently contractual that have limited rights and benefits. Many of those educators aren't able to do things like take regular sick days. When they're sick, they can't take off. They can't go to any urgent doctor's appointments, and they're afraid of losing their pay. Oftentimes, they come to work sick or just don't go to their doctor's appointments at all, which makes the work environment unsafe for the MSD community, for the students, staff, and faculty. And it has really damaged the morale at the school. Contractual educators are frustrated about losing pay for going to see the doctor. They look at those who have permanent positions that are able to take off whenever they need to without worrying that they'll lose their pay. They feel like those who have a permanent position are legitimate. And this feeling doesn't have to be this way. It is not this way in other county public schools. Contractual positions, as much as we do at MSD, are not reliable. The new administration has done quite a bit to recognize the discrepancy between the contractual and full-time permanent positions. So we are getting 20 positions converted to permanent positions. But we will still have about 40 educators that will still be contractual. So we are calling on you to transfer $3 million from the Boost program. The program is using state dollars to private schools. Most of our students aren't able to attend those schools. That again, that $3 million will help convert most of our contractual educators and have them in permanent positions. We believe that that $3 million for those conversions will convert about 25 to 30 educators to become permanent. And that will bring more standardization throughout public schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith and members of the House Education and Economic Division Subcommittee. My name is Richard Ballard. I am a high school math teacher at the Maryland School for the Deaf at the Frederick campus. Maryland School for the Deaf is a state agency as well as a K-12 public school that educates deaf and hard of hearing children from all over the state of Maryland. We are here to have a favorable with amendment report of the budget and ask that $3 million be transferred from the Boost voucher program to our state public funded school at MSD to convert the contractual positions to permanent positions. I believe you already have a copy of my written testimony, so I will just go over a couple key points. MSD is a public school where all of the students have IEPs. Unfortunately, one of the biggest challenges is that these students have been impacted by language deprivation. When they go home at the end of the day, many of them do not have access to communication in ASL, which means that they are impacted by developmental delays, and we have to figure out how to bridge that gap. The educators are working very hard to give the best possible education to these students and make sure they receive the basic rights that the rest of the residents of the state of Maryland receive. We are also trying to narrow the gap of student outcomes in all academic areas in order to meet the state standardized criteria. And the curriculum is designed for students whose first language is English. Because we are a state agency, our funding does not come from the blueprint. It just comes from general funds. Because of that, our budget has been tight, just like other agencies, but that means that historically, we have a large number of contracts that are being utilized. And that limits the due process rights. Up until now, like has been previously mentioned, 27% of these educators are contractors. In the public school system, they do not utilize contracts like we do, which means those who are contractual, they're not able to, they aren't shown respect because of their temporary work status. We are asking for the funding for non-public schools. There are no deaf and hard of hearing students there. So why not transfer that funding to MSD for this public school so that we are able to convert these temporary positions into permanent positions? The public tax that is being utilized should be going to public schools, especially for those students who are deaf and hard of hearing. They deserve it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much to the witnesses for their testimony. Thank you for your service supporting Maryland youth that are both deaf or hard of hearing. And I also want to thank you for reminding us about the unique situation around language deprivation that can be faced by the students at the school. I think that's something many hearing people do not consider, and it underscores the importance of the work that you do at your school. So thank you so much. Are there any questions? Delegate Grants.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So is this the first time that Maryland School for the Deaf has suggested that we make cuts in another part of the budget?
So I don't believe, thank you, Delegate. I don't believe the School for the Deaf agency itself is proposing this. This is the faculty and staff union who is making this suggestion.
First time that your group has made this that you suggest that we cut another part of the budget.
The first time, well, so this union for the teachers and the staff at Maryland School for the Deaf was just certified in 2023. So we haven't, this is the first time.
Okay,
AFT, we've looked at other elements of the state. I'm sure in the history of AFT, we've made recommendations about making cuts.
all right, thank you.
Any other questions for the panel? Thank you so much. The next witness I'll be calling is Mr. Robert Hare of the Maryland School for the Blind. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much, Chair Smith, members of the committee. As always, Ms. Hyde, thank you so much for your thorough analysis. At the Maryland School for the Blind, we are deeply honored that you've entrusted us with the responsibility of caring for the state's, some of the state's most vulnerable students through the work that we do every single day. MSB touches the lives of over 1,500 blind and low vision students across Maryland's 24 jurisdictions, providing through its numerous specialized services, many things that we do through things like Braille textbooks, direct in-home services through our Blind Infants and Toddlers program, direct support in public schools through teachers that teach children Braille and cane mobility skills, traditional on-campus school services, specialized camps and summer school and job training skills. We help these students lead independent and fulfilling lives each and every day, contributing to the well-being of our state as a whole. Our on-campus program in particular provides services that are often not feasible or cost-effective in local school settings. Our students face a wide range of challenges from mild learning differences to very complex medical and behavioral issues. In fact, 96% of our on-campus students have multiple disabilities. Many are very medically fragile. Some of them have feeding tubes and can't take food by mouth. Some of them can't communicate verbally, in addition to their vision loss, or have physical disabilities as well. We understand the financial challenges that are facing the state right now, and we're committing to being responsible stewards of the resources that you've entrusted to us. But our ability to continue providing our vital services are contingent on our ability to also attract and retain our high-quality staff. In this spirit, we also respectfully request support towards our pay plan to address the school's compensation needs, which is $1.6 million. This investment would keep our compensation competitive and enable us to uphold our commitment to serving Maryland's vulnerable students. You might remember that we were in a very deep financial hole when I took the school over a few years ago. I came to many of you individually for help. You helped us figure out the root problem. You asked us to complete exhaustive reports of our services and finances, and we figured out that the formula funding didn't quite keep up with the compensation needs for the staff that were meeting the needs of our complex students. Just as it doesn't in FY25, which is a peculiarly odd year with only $37.7 thousand from formula funding. And then you helped us champion the pay plan legislation, which is supposed to bring salaries competitive to local schools. And you might also remember that one of the obstacles was the frozen pension plan that was siphoning $3 million a year from MSB's annual operating budget. It was an albatross around our neck, and it would take over $20 million to terminate that plan, which we were never going to be able to do. And then miraculously, we were able to pay it off with a few $1 million from our endowment. It was really a miracle. And then with a $1 million supplemental from the state, we were able to finally achieve parity, bringing some of our lowest paid employees up to budget or up to competitive wages with Baltimore County Public Schools. It was, for some of our staff, a miraculous, life-changing raise for them. So again, we're so profoundly grateful for your trust and for your support and for your consideration in these challenging budget times. And we hope that you'll consider anything that you can do to help us to continue to maintain and not lose ground on this achievement that we've made as we continue to serve these students. We submitted our response to the questions that were raised in Ms. Hyde's report, and we're happy to respond to any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for the witness today? Seeing none, thank you again for your leadership at the Maryland School for the Blind and the way you support our whole state. Thank you so much. Our next witnesses, I would like them to all come together. Can we hear from Garrett O'Day, Nefertari Lee, and Nubi Caceres? And please correct all pronunciations as appropriate. Oh, and Rabbi Sadwin, I apologize, you're on a different piece of paper. Yes.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you very much. For the record, I'm Garrett O'Day, Deputy Director of the Maryland Catholic Conference, representing the 3 dioceses that include over 1 million Maryland Catholics and nearly 50,000 students at our Catholic school. I'm here to address a couple of the items in Ms. Hyde's wonderful presentation. Thank you to her. Thank you all for having us today. I'm also Vice President of Maryland CAPE with Rabbi Sadwin, the Non-Public School Coalition of 135,000 non-public school students. Many of you heard from parents on Boost a week or so ago. So, I'll keep this brief as to that. But just to respond to what the gentleman from AFT was recommending, general fund money be taken from Boost. Maryland School for the Blind is very important. We very much support it being funded, but Boost funds are not general fund funds. They are special fund funds. Just to clarify that, and it does not take from the public school system or the Maryland School from the Blind. These kids are 100% low income. Boost has been a major investment in our state's educational landscape, and around 23,000 scholarships have been given to low income, mostly minority kids that are excelling in their education with the Boost program. This is one of the diverse ways that Maryland is investing in our future, and this provides a huge return, as you heard from the parents last week that were here before your full committee. Just a last note on Boost, there was $18 million in demand requested from parents under this based on the going rate for scholarships for the $9 million that was available last year, and a couple thousand kids were denied because there wasn't enough money to go around. So the demand is there, of course. Just a couple comments on the other items that were mentioned too. On the health and safety, this was a new program, $2.5 million. So for 4 years, non-public schools had a safety security fund for $3.5 million. That was taken away in 2003, and this was part of adding back in security funds for our non-public school students. So we asked that that be added back into the budget because otherwise non-public school students would be left without a dedicated security funding program. So please show that our kids' safety does matter by funding that. Thank you for the textbook fund, which is going strong, textbook and technology. Kids in the schools that take funds under that program to reduce the cost for the parents represent 80,000 of the 135,000 non-public school students in Maryland. So we thank you for funding all of these programs and for supporting our students.
I just want to mention for the record that the proposal is from the School for the Deaf. Just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Nubi Caceres, and I have 3 kids who attend St. Andrew's Apostle School, a 4th grader, a 2nd grader, and a preschooler. When my husband was diagnosed with stage 5 kidney disease, he had to start dialysis right away. We were already applying for Boost scholarships for my kids to attend private school. Boost came through us in a big way, providing us with financial support we needed to ensure that our children could still attend private school, despite our challenging circumstances. I've always looked forward to my kids attending private school due to the benefits in smaller classes, individualized support, diversity, and grade rubric. By providing my family with financial assistance, Boost has always truly changed my children's educational trajectory. I believe that Boost program is an excellent resource for families, and I hope it continues to exist for the long term. You guys have anything to say?
Please fund boost so more kids like me and my brothers can receive these opportunities.
Thank you.
Very good job, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and the members of the committee. Some of the faces are starting to look really familiar. Thank you for hearing us today in support of this lifeline of a program. I'm Nefertari Lee, and I was a boost recipient parent for my son, Bryce. Bryce had the opportunity to attend Calvert Hart College High School on a boost scholarship for 4 years. He's went on to college and is now thriving due to the opportunities that started with Boost. When Bryce received Boost, I began to help other parents apply and get involved. And I saw the direct impact that these options provided by Boost made in the everyday lives of these families. So that's why I'm still here today after my son has graduated. I am now the parent leader of the Boost Coalition, a nonprofit coalition of thousands of parents and supporters of Boost. During Bryce's freshman year, we also lost my oldest son to gun violence in Baltimore City. Bryce too was lost. Bryce's school rallied around our family and made sure that our trauma was addressed and supported. He went on to graduate with straight A's and left his school as the first African-American soccer captain that the school had ever had. Bryce was also accepted into every college he applied to. But this is about more than just an education. Bryce got an excellent foundation for his future. He gained a sense of self-worth. He developed confidence in himself and a compassion for others. He also got to see himself as a leader and was placed on a platform to promote change. These stories don't end with Bryce. These children really are our future. We absolutely need good public schools, but we also need good supplemental options provided through Boost as well. And these two things don't have to be mutually exclusive. We need this program. Schools for the deaf are very important, but taking from low-income minority families is not the answer. I sat back here and I listened, and this story has been told a couple of times, the testimony, and I started to think about what Boost really has meant to our family. And what I started to think about was, what was life like before Boost? I would work from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., 7 days a week as a news carrier for the Baltimore Sun. I would then come home, shower and change into my suit and be on a MARC train headed to Washington, D.C., where I worked at the Department of Commerce as an accountant by 7 a.m. I swear I spent most of my day coordinating and delegating pickups and drop-offs and daily caretaking of my children because I could not be there. I'd get off at 5 p.m., get back on the MARC, and be back in Baltimore to be at my third job as a pharmaceutical assistant for HMIS in Hunt Valley from 7 to 10. I'd get home tired and exhausted just to wake up and do it all over again, because I believe then, just as I do now, that education helps close the gap of socioeconomic disparity. Looking back, I honestly don't know how I did it. So for me and my family, Boost allowed me to stop working 2 part-time jobs so that I could finally be the present parent that I needed to be. With Nakeem and Jordan, I never got to see a swim meet, a basketball game, a wrestling match, or a football game, and I can't get that time back. Nakeem is gone, and I'm working to repair the damage that being an absentee parent has on Jordan. But with Bryce, and absolutely because of Boost, I got to be there. I got to be a teen mom for the first time, and I'm forever grateful. To you on the other side, this may seem like just dollars and cents, but we're real people who depend on this scholarship and need this scholarship. So on behalf of the Boost Scholarship Coalition, I stand in support of Boost. Oh, and check out Boost YouTube video out where Bryce and myself are featured. And I thank you for your time today.
I thank you for your testimony. I thank you for being such an example of perseverance, not only within your family, but sharing in this space. There are many people across this state that are making sacrifices that are similar, but it was not in vain. I do want you to know that and to be proud of the mother you were and are today. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for heading that part too. It's inspiring to all of us here. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. My name is Rabbi Ariel Satter, and I'm the Executive Director of Agudath Israel of Maryland, representing Maryland's Jewish schools. And as Garrett mentioned, I'm the President of Maryland Cape, representing the non-public schools. I think we've heard what we need to hear. This program is vital. The programs that benefit non-public schools are vital. These are tax-paying families, struggling families who are looking for the stories that we just heard, looking for the opportunities for their children, for themselves. And we hope for the continuity of this program, the growth. Obviously, maybe not this year per se, but the growth of this program. As Garrett mentioned, the $18 million of requests, the waiting list, it just grows longer and longer each year. And these are parents, they ask us, you know, why are we even applying if there's no funds? So it's important to show that the need is great. And I thank you for the opportunity and have a nice day.
But for your testimony. Are there any questions for our panel? Seeing none, thank you for all of you for being here today. And young men, you did a great job. Should be very proud. Continue speaking. All right, that concludes, I believe, all witnesses for our MSDE funding for educational operations. So we'll be moving on to the Interagency Commission on School Construction, and we will begin with analysis from Laura Hyde.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm Laura Hyde, presenting the budget analysis for the Interagency Commission on School Construction. We're starting on page 1 with the operating budget summary. ISC's budget decreases slightly by $500,000 or 3.3% to $17.3 million. This amount includes $10 million for the public school safety program. And so therefore this administrative budget for the agency is $7.3 million. Looking on page 2, under the proposed deficiency, ISC receives 2 deficiency allocations in this budget of approximately $900,000, with the majority of the increase of $879,000 for the Facilities Data System, or FDS, which is part of the agency's Integrated Master Facility Asset Library, or INFAL, required in Chapter 14 of 2018. Turning to page 3, Exhibit 1, it's the overview of agency spending. This shows that 58% of ISC's total allowance is the $10 million for the school safety grant program, with personnel and contractual services totaling approximately $6.9 million or 41% of the remaining budget. All other expenses total less than 1% of this budget. And then turning to page 4, Exhibit 2, this is the proposed budget. This exhibit shows that a net increase of $600,000 in salaries makes up the majority of the change in this budget from fiscal 24 to 25. Other changes include a slight decrease for computer-related costs due to the deficiency allocation and an increase of $122,000 for administrative expenses. Turning to page 6, personnel. IAC has filled 4 vacancies in the last calendar year, which decreased the agency's vacant positions by 7. Since a year ago, in the fiscal 2025 proposed budget, IAC gains 3 positions, 2 capital project manager positions, and 1 database specialist manager. Turning to page 8 in the issues section of this analysis. So IAC has 1 issue, which is an update on the status of tasks required by Chapter 32. So as shown in Exhibit 3 on that page, in response to a 2023 Joint Chairman's Report request for a committee narrative in December 2023, IAC provided an update on the agency's progress to meet Chapter 32 implementation requirements. IAC reported that they aligned sufficiency standards and gross area baseline allowances with blueprint mandates, developed state and local cost share formulas, and verified state facilities assessment data. IAC is still working to update its administrative procedures guide to include approved enrollment projections after consultation with LEAs, as well as update the appeals process. The agency was not able to resolve an issue with food preparation standards in the survey of school buildings. The bold language at the top of the exhibit notes that IAC interpreted a requirement in Chapter 32 to be their annual maintenance report, which is submitted on time in October 2023. However, the requirement was to provide an update on the statewide facility assessment and infall, so the agency reports it will provide that update as soon as possible. Turning to page 9 and 10, this is a related issue on the agency's infall business management system and FDS facilities data system. So Chapter 14 required IAC to build a cloud-based asset library, that's infall, which would integrate preventive maintenance and facilities assessment data and allow LEAs to access these data electronically. Infall has 2 main components, the business management system, which is in the final testing stage, and the facilities data system, which is under development and will eventually be part of infall. IAC received 3 allocations of approximately $3.2 million in fiscal 21, 23, and 24 respectively for this project. In fiscal 2021 and 23, allocations totaled $2.2 million. In fiscal 24, IAC receives a deficiency allocation that I mentioned previously in the fiscal 25 budget as introduced, which when added to the previous allocations, total another approximate $1 million in fiscal 2024 funding. IAC does not expect additional allocations, so this project is expected to be completed in fiscal 2025. Additional information on this project is in Appendix 2. So the bold language on page 10 asks IAC for an update on Chapter 32 implementation, including the status of the SFA report, a timetable for the administrative procedures guide and appeal process, specifically for approved enrollment projections for individual projects, and then a proposed remedy if the agency has one for the unresolved concern around the minimum equipment needed for food preparation used in the survey of school buildings. The recommendations for the agency is to concur with the governor's allowance. And this concludes my presentation. I stand for questions.
Thank you so much for your excellent presentation. Are there any questions for our analysts? Seeing none, we're ready to hear from Senator Casemeyer. There you are. Welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Ed Casemeyer. I'm Chair of the IAC. And with me today is our Executive Director, Mr. Donahue, and our Deputy Director, Cassandra Viscara. Great to have her back here. She has been ill this couple of days. It's probably not quite on task, but I just, as a former chair, I wanted to say, in watching you today, I think it's really nice that you take the time to respond to your witnesses, because it's just something they cherish. And I think people really think you're human beings when you talk to them. So I know it's out of line right now, but I just wanted to express that. We appreciate the time you've given us to review our budget and to respond to the analysts' recommendations. Alex will do that in a few minutes. As a matter of fact, we also want to thank Laura, which we've done several times this week already, for her analysis, and the staff really appreciates all the work she does every year. Over the past 5 years, our workload has increased significantly, mainly due to the 21st century school program that was passed several years ago, the Build to Learn Act, which was passed a couple of years ago, and the House Bill 1290 that was passed back in 2022. These responsibilities that we have now are allocating between $450 million and $1 billion of school construction money every year. We also now have to administer 2 programs that require about 500 to 600 inspections of all the schools in the state. Excuse me. And we provide technical assistance to all the LEAs to try to advise them on how to develop their portfolio of school construction projects. I do want to thank the General Assembly and the Department of Budget Management for providing us with additional positions to provide these services. They've given us, we now have 41 people who work at the agency, but candidly, the need for school construction and renovations is overwhelming. And we thank you for your continued support of our program. With that, Alex will take over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Harris, and members of the committee. Thank you so much for this time, and thank you for your consistent and strong support of the IC and school construction across the state. Before we respond to the analysis, I'd like to share a little bit about some of the big things going on at the IC and the school construction. For the benefit of those committee members who are not sitting on the capital budget subcommittee, I'll recap one item I shared there earlier this week, but then I'll move on to new items. The IAC has 2 primary areas of activity. First is getting the greatest possible return on investment from the appropriated funds. And the second is really providing technical assistance to LEAs and counties to support effective school portfolio management. This past year, in the service of both, as well as of good government, we have conducted an extensive outreach effort to engage with all the major stakeholder groups, including the LEAs first and foremost, but also the county governments, and ideally in the same room at the same time. Just one example is the recent 2-day visit that Chair Casemeyer and I and staff made to Worcester County, in which we visited 8 of the county's 14 schools and then met with the superintendent, a school board member, the county commission president, county administrators, and members of Senator Carrozza's staff all together. I'm having other similar conversations in a number of other counties as well. We've also been engaging with MABE, MACO, ASBO, and the Superintendent's Association through multiple presentations and meetings in the last year. And finally, it's been my real pleasure to have responded to a large and growing number of inquiries from senators and delegates. I'm happy to receive a call from any legislator who wants to ask questions about school construction and take whatever constructive criticism might be offered. With regard to the IAC's operating budget, I'm pleased to report that some of the operating funds you provide to us are being used to bring the IAC's operations and inherited financial and business management systems out of the 20th century and into the 21st, in part to achieve the transparency and the efficiency that the public, the General Assembly, and our stakeholders need and demand. When I joined the IAC 6 years ago, we were using a set of antiquated and inefficient legacy systems and still even receiving submissions from school districts by way of paper hand-delivered by couriers. Our data server was from 2003 and was no longer supported. Over the past 2 years, we have undertaken a massive amount of work to replace the 3 major systems. We've completed our website replacement. Our new online document management system implementation is in process now, and our data management system, as Laura described, is about to start. Thanks to assistance from the Department of IT, from DoIT. We really appreciate that help and support. These systems will make our systems and our work hugely more efficient and transparent and make it worlds easier for the school districts to work with us. Now to the legislative analysis, and I really thank Laura again for that. And I'm very pleased to respond because I don't think we've ever had one this short. The analysis asked for an explanation of the debt capacity study for revolving loan funds. This was a study commissioned by the IAC on local wealth and other financial considerations that the IAC intends to use to develop our revolving loan fund, and that will also inform the IAC's other analyses. Final cost was $46,000. The IAC does not anticipate any additional study on the topic. However, we do anticipate contracting for some consulting support, likely from University of Maryland, to develop policy options for our planned revision in the coming year of the state local cost share formula that the statute requires us to use as part of how we determine project funding. The analysis also asked several questions about the implementation of Chapter 32, specifically a report on the statewide facility assessment. We'll be happy to provide that in the coming weeks. And we're aiming also for fall of this year to release our revised administrative procedures guide, which contains a significant body of IAC policies and procedures and guidance to school districts. And we continue to work with the LEAs and Department of Health on how best to approach setting standards for kitchen equipment. It's a tricky and detailed area, in part because we need to work with the existing local authorities and this local control structure there. But in the meantime, we're surveying every LEA annually on any perceived deficiencies in their food preparation equipment. Madam Chair, I know this has been a lot quickly, so I'll wrap here, but I really appreciate this time to share this update with you, and it's our privilege to stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Who knew you were so punny? Anyways, I also want to thank you, Senator Casemeyer, for your kind words. I was just sitting here thinking that, quite frankly, the work you oversee is as critical to the provision of high quality education as the personnel and the curriculum that they're using, because where people are working and learning and the conditions that they're exposed to can be transformative, or it can be a complete barrier to them learning. So this is critically important work. Are there any questions for the IAC officials today? Seeing none, thank you for your work. That concludes the budget hearing for Interagency Commission on School Construction. We're now moving to what I believe is why most of you are in this room today, for the budget for the Maryland Higher Education Commission. We'll hear from Sarah Baker, our analyst.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to start with online enrollments on page 6. Exhibit 1 shows the in and out state enrollments at Maryland institutions. And as you see, enrollment significantly increased in fall 2020, reflecting the impact of the institutions teaching most courses remotely. Since then, enrollment has fallen over 44%, but total enrollment exceeds pre-pandemic levels. Turning to Exhibit 2 on page 7, this shows the top 5 Maryland institutions with the highest online enrollments, which account for over 70% of the enrollments in the state. And overall, only global campus saw an increase in enrollment. Exhibit 3 on page 8 shows the number of students from Maryland enrolled in other states, which peaked in 2020 due to the institutions turning to remote learning and has since dropped. Turning to student loan debt tax credit, at the bottom of the page is a summary of changes made to the program for the 23 tax year, including doubling the amount of the tax credit MHEC can approve to $18 million, in which $9 million is reserved for state employees. In addition, priority is given to those who graduated from a Maryland institution where at least 40% of the students were Pell eligible. As shown on Exhibit 4 on page 10, for the 23 tax year, the number of applications declined by almost 40%, which may be due to the timing of the end of the 3-year suspension on student loan payments. Exhibit 5 on page 11 shows that 86% of the applicants were eligible for the tax credit and 17% of them were eligible for the maximum credit of $5,000. Exhibit 6 on page 12 shows the outstanding loan balances of recipients, and 20.5% of the recipients had balances exceeding $100,000. Turning to the budget on Exhibit 7 on page 13 shows the spending for 25. Funding for Selinger, when including the contingent reduction, accounts for 52% of the spending. Education and grants comprise 25% of the spending, and administration 8%. As shown on Exhibit 8 on page 14, funds decreased by $54.1 million in 25, when including the proposed deficiency in the contingent reduction for Selinger, which decreases by $67 million. There's a decrease of $11.3 million, reflecting the transfer of Maryland 529 Enable to the Treasurer's office. There is also $25 million to fund the governor's higher education security and enhancement funding initiative. There are also 2 one-time deficiencies. One is to modify the MD caps, and the other to provide additional funding for the costs related to MHEC's move to East Redwood Street. Turning to the Selinger funding, an Exhibit 9 on page 16 shows funding since 2020. In 22, funding increased 50.5% due to funding at statutory percentage of 15.5%. This and increases in the budget for the selective 4-year institutions resulted in a doubling of funding between 21 and 23. Funding decreases $3.2 million in 25 due to a change in methodology used to calculating Selinger, which is discussed towards the bottom of the page. Basically, the Department of Budget Management broke from past practice using the self-reported enrollment projections prepared by the institutions and used MHEC's enrollment projections in calculating the funding per full-time equivalent students at the selective public 4-year institutions. DLS notes there have been reoccurring issues with MHEC's methodology, which consistently missed enrollment declines and whose projections are overly optimistic and compared to that of the institutions. Exhibit 10 on page 17 shows the impact by institutions, in which you can see funding for Selinger is $7.5 million lower than expected. DLS also notes that statute does not specify the source of the data for the full-time equivalent students, therefore recommends adopting a provision in the BRFA to require the reuse of the selective public 4-year institutions self-reported full-time equivalent student data that is based on credit hours for calculating the full-time equivalent student data enrollment for Cade, Selinger, and Baltimore City Community College formulas. In addition, DLS also recommends that University System of Maryland, Morgan, and St. Mary's convene a work group to develop a uniform methodology for calculating graduate full-time equivalent students when used in calculating their total full-time equivalent student enrollment. Turning to Exhibit 11 on page 18, compares full-time equivalent student enrollments at the MICUA institutions based on current law and the BRFA. A provision in the BRFA changes the data used to calculate the allocation of Selinger funds from the total full-time equivalent student enrollment to only using undergraduate full-time student equivalent enrollment. And this results in a reduction of over 20,000 FTEs. As shown on Exhibit 12 on page 19, this leads to a $63.8 million dollar reduction in the funding for Sellinger when compared to current law. Due to having a higher graduate student population, Johns Hopkins would experience the largest decline of $53.8 million, and the decreases at the other institutions range from about 13,000 to 1.7 million. Exhibit 13 on page 20 shows the out-year impact of the funding under current law compared to the BRFA. And overall, between 25 and 29, total reduction in funding is estimated to be $341.2 million. Turning to education grants on page 21. As shown on exhibit 14, funding for grants increased $12.4 million, which is mainly due to the $25 million for the Security Enhancement Initiative, which will provide grants to universities to enhance campus security. And we asked the secretary to brief the committee on plans for allocating this grant. Turning to personnel on page 22, the allowance includes 11 new positions, 5 of which are for the Office of Student Financial Assistant, and 1 is for a deputy secretary. The first issue on page 23 is improving program approval process. As you may recall, language is added to last year's budget bill restricting funds until a report was submitted from the legislative work group with recommendations to improve MHEC's program approval process. The work group approved 23 recommendations in the areas listed on the page, and there's more detailed description provided in Appendix 2. I would note that SB 129 and HB 1244 as introduced would incorporate these recommendations into statute. I do note there are some concerns about the additional 10 positions that were provided for a program evaluation unit established under Chapter 41 of 21, and that's discussed on page 24. These positions were created and filled before the release of the final report of the National Center for Higher Education Management System, which not only included recommendations to improve program approval process, but also how to best utilize the new positions. And there are also questions that the new positions were best aligned with the increased responsibilities. And there are further concerns with the recommendations of the work group if MHEC has the appropriate staff to meet the increased requirements. We asked the secretary to comment on if the current program review unit staff will be able to support their requirements and increase responsibilities proposed under SB 1020 and HB 1224. The last issue is on page 24 related to the new financial aid system, in which $8 million from the dedicated purpose account was allocated in fiscal 23 budget to support the development of a new system. According to the Department of Information Technology, and is shown in the major information technology appendix of the governor's budget book, in 23, a little over $300,000 was spent on the project. However, no funds have been transferred from the dedicated purpose account. The governor's budgets also show $6.8 million in special funds from the dedicated purpose account being appropriated in 25, but these funds are not included in MHEC's budget. We asked the secretary to comment on why dedicated purpose funds were not used in 23 and expected development costs, and on the use of the DPA funds to cover expenses. The secretary should also comment on when the fiscal 25 funding is expected to be appropriated. Recommendations start on page 25. The first is a restriction of funds pending a report on the status of correction actions related to the most recent fiscal compliance audit. The next 2 are annual requests for reports on institutional aid, Pell Grants, and loan data by EFC and progress towards a 55% completion goal. And on page 26 is the BRFA recommendation specifying the source of FTES data used in the funding formula. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Baker, for your excellent report. Any questions? Seeing none, at this time, we'll hear from Secretary Wright. And team. Everything okay?
Thank you, Chair Smith and members of the Education and Economic Development Subcommittee for the opportunity to offer some brief comments on the governor's proposed budget for the Maryland Higher Education Commission. I also want to thank Ms. Sarah Baker and legislative staff for their really thorough analysis. I have with me Assistant Secretary for MHEC for Finance and Administration, Mr. Jeff Newman. We are pleased that FY 2025 budget provides continued funding for the arduous work ahead of the Maryland Higher Education Commission. As you know, there are several challenges facing higher education, not only in Maryland, but across our great nation. Changes in higher education are imminent, and we must ensure that Maryland institutions are highly successful in the emerging scenarios. We are rebuilding our agency and confidence among our stakeholders. Our agency is committed to addressing the numerous problems that for far too long have hampered student success, institutional growth, and the creation of a cohesive workforce. This cohesion is the basis of Maryland's social and economic fabric. There are several paradigm shifts across higher education, from understanding the value of a degree or certificate to upskilling or reskilling individuals for emerging fields to redefining college readiness. To be the state government's partner that leads in these paradigm shifts, the state government partner that you all expect MHAC to be, we must focus on rebuilding the agency and certainly confidence among our stakeholders. Since my appointment, I have affirmed my commitment to rebuild and strengthen MHAC's mission and guide the agency's actions. We look forward to the continuing work we have initiated at MHAC with the stakeholders from all segments, nonprofits focused on student success and businesses, and building a robust workforce through post-secondary education. MHAC is singularly focused on leveraging higher education as a powerful tool to propel people forward and leave no one behind. Our agency has the important and rewarding task of coordinating 16 community colleges, 14 public four-year institutions, 22 private institutions, 8 regional higher education centers, and 140 private career schools. We also have 15 out-of-state institutions operating in Maryland and 11 post-secondary institutions operating with a religious exemption. Moreover, there are 186 entities that provide post-secondary educational and training opportunities to our nation's veterans via the GI Bill. These entities that MHAC coordinates and regulates together serve close to 500,000 students each year. You have our written responses. However, I would like to speak directly to a few key points that were identified in our analysis. And I would like to highlight some new initiatives. First, about our space needs. We are currently housed in the Nancy Grasmick building, which is owned by the Maryland State Department of Education across 3 different floors. Renovations are scheduled for this building within 3 to 5 years, during which time both MSDE and MHAC will have to move out of the building to temporary offices for 2 years. After the renovations, MSDE plans to reclaim the space in the building for its growing number of employees. MHAC is planning to move to new office space, which has been identified at 217 East Redwood Street in Baltimore City, a few blocks from the current offices in the Grasmick building. The space is currently sitting vacant after DJS moved out. We expect to assume the lease to this space. All MHAC staff will be on one floor, increasing workforce efficiency and cross-agency communication. On staffing, we are grateful for the additional resources allocated to the MHAC budget. I would like to share a stark statistics. Although I hate to compare data from 2 different states because our systems are often different, but here is an example. Texas has 30 financial aid programs, and they have 90 employees in their financial aid unit. For us in Maryland, we have 27 financial aid programs, and we have 18 employees. The investment made through MHAC's budget will translate into real workforce and economic growth for the state of Maryland as we seek to close the gaps that exist with respect to college access, educational equity, and workforce development. MHAC is focused on educational achievement, workforce development, and business creation. Several financial aid scholarships and grants have been created over the years that have to be administered, tracked, and reported. Yet the agency has not realized any staff increase to manage and coordinate the new financial aid initiatives. New financial aid programs have been created over the time, and people are working harder at the agency with fewer resources, leading to revolving vacancies. MHAC must fulfill the agency's mission and maintain a stable professional staff with institutional knowledge. The additional pins in the FY 2025 budget will help the agency to meet its statutory duties and better serve the public. On our post-2025 goals, completion goals, Maryland exceeds nationwide trends in college completion, indicating a robust drive for educational ladders and training at multiple entry levels. Yet, equity gaps among racial and ethnic groups indicate that not all students are completing at the same rate. MHAC is focusing on new post-2025 completion goals that will enable Maryland to serve our students and increase Maryland's national profile. These goals will be focused on educational equity, meaningful credentials, population versus production goals, industry-specific goals, research and innovation goals. We are aligning our higher education goals with the current state needs to expand educational equity and economic competitiveness. These opportunities are often one step in a much larger career pathway and are viable opportunities for individuals to make a living wage. MHAC is ready to improve Maryland's economic edge with a world-class economy, attracting top-tier talent and expanding startup business creation through education and economic competitiveness. MHAC again is singularly focused on leveraging higher education as a powerful tool to propel people forward and leave no one behind. In fact, we have begun collaboration with national organizations like the Aspen Institute, MDRC, and the State Higher Education Executive Officers Group. There is a paradigm shift happening at MHAC. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much for your testimony, also for your leadership and participation in the program approval work group. And to that effect, I wanted to know if you could maybe discuss some of those items that MHAC was committed to implementing, if any of them would be ready by session 2025.
I expect that the recommendations that are supposed to happen before there are certain recommendations that can only be done post 2025. We are reasonably confident that everything else will be ready to come forward before the session starts in 2025.
Well, that's music to our ears. Thank you so much for
Thank
that.
you.
Are there any questions for Secretary Wright? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony. We do have a robust witness list. I want to know, is Matt Power from MICUA here, or Anande, would you be giving remarks on behalf of MICUA?
No, Matt is in the Senate.
Okay.
But we have
Yeah, I didn't know if I should begin with, you know what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to get the sequencing. Okay, it's fine. No worries, no worries. Okay, to that effect, I'd like to request that Julia Jaskin, President, McDaniel, Max Sweeney. All right. And can we get Maria Tilden? Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for permitting us to speak with you today. We very much appreciate it. My name is Julia Jaskin, and I'm the president of McDaniel College in Westminster, Maryland, located in Carroll County. I've been a member of the McDaniel community for over 20 years, and during that time, I've seen firsthand the life-changing impact of the Sellinger program on our campus. Of the approximately 1,700 undergraduate students at McDaniel, 40% are first generation and 36% are Pell eligible. Each year, over 90% of our Sellinger funding has gone directly towards financial aid to support our students. In fact, on a percentage basis, more first generation and low income students graduate from McDaniel than most of our higher education peers throughout the state, which is true of many MICUA institutions. MICUA schools have higher 4-year and 6-year graduation rates compared to our state and national competitors, and these numbers apply across all demographics. We would not be able to accomplish this for Maryland residents without the Sellinger program. McDaniel is committed to preparing students to contribute to their communities. Last summer, Carroll County Public Schools had 22 unfilled classroom teacher positions. This year, McDaniel used a $1.8 million state grant to create the Teacher Collaborative Fellowship, where students receive a $23,000 stipend to use towards tuition and living expenses while enrolled in this intensive year-long program. On the health sciences front, this year, McDaniel added a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing program, which will help address critical nursing shortages in Carroll County and the region. These types of close community partnerships allow for the cooperative strategies to best meet Maryland's needs. In closing, my colleagues and I understand and empathize with the pressure you are under, but our hope is to find a shared middle ground that respects the decades-long partnership between our institutions and the state. I respectfully request that you embrace the MICUA proposal and allow us to continue changing lives for our students. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith and members of the subcommittee. My name is Max Sweeney. I'm a senior at McDaniel College with a double major in political science and philosophy, and I live in District 38B. I would like to start out by saying thank you for supporting the Sellinger Fund in past years. This fund has been vital to the longevity and vitality of our private colleges in Maryland, and it has helped me to be sitting here with you all today. When I was freshly 18 looking at colleges, my finances were at the forefront of my mind. I grew up with a single mother raising 3 young children, and I knew I needed to work hard in high school to receive scholarships and pay for my own education. When my favorite teacher from high school pointed to McDaniel, I toured the campus and fell in love immediately. But as many potential college students do, I was immediately worried about how I was going to pay for it. Fortunately, with the help of the Sellinger Fund, I was able to get almost an entire full ride to McDaniel. Since coming there, I've taken advantage of so many amazing connections and have been able to intern with Senator Ben Cardin, as well as at Clean Water Action, an environmental nonprofit in Maryland. I wouldn't have been able to gain these connections if I hadn't gone to the small private liberal arts college where I had the opportunity to truly invest in my future. After college, I either want to work right here in the State House or in DC to continue, like all of you, to make the world a better place. To do that and to continue to preserve the next generation of world changers, I need your help. To preserve the legislative integrity of the Sellinger formula created by the General Assembly more than 5 decades ago, reject the current language in the BRFA and restore the formula to its original design. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Congratulations, you're almost through with undergrad. That's gone very fast, and it does sound like you indeed have a bright future, so kudos.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Smith and members of the subcommittee. For the record, my name is Maria Harris Tilden. I'm the Vice President for Government, Community, and Economic Partnerships at Johns Hopkins University in Madison. I first want to thank this body for supporting Sellinger for more than 50 years. The rationale to fund independent institutions of higher education that existed in 1972 is still true today. It is imperative that the state preserve and strengthen the dual system of higher education in the state of Maryland. Every student in Maryland, regardless of background, should have the opportunity to pursue a degree at an institution of their choosing without incurring substantial student debt. As the largest private employer in Baltimore City and in the state of Maryland, Johns Hopkins accounts for more than $3 billion in total research spending in Maryland, $331 million in licensing revenue over the past 10 years, and 163 plus startups based on Hopkins technology that account for over 1,500 jobs across Maryland. Our impact on employment and new business formation is dramatic and eclipses by a significant measure any other institution in the state. And that is based on the foundation of our graduates and undergraduates who are benefiting from Sellinger. Sellinger dollars are crucial to our ability to keep Maryland students in state through competitive aid packages. In 2023, 90% of the Salinger funding Johns Hopkins received was used to provide financial aid to Maryland students, and the remaining 10% of funds was allocated to programs that directly support them in their academic endeavors. As you heard earlier, Maryland is actually a net exporter of students, and Hopkins is committed to doing our best to recruit and retain Maryland students and provide access to underrepresented groups. 34% of Salinger students, nearly 5,000 Hopkins students, are 38% eligible, Pell eligible, or representative of first generation college students. These are remarkable statistics that prove that Salinger funds are meeting the goals the program was designed to achieve and reflects the state's 50-year commitment to advance access to affordable higher education at both public and private Maryland institutions. In closing, a dramatic reduction to this critical funding would do real and substantial harm to Maryland students and Maryland's economy writ large, precisely at a time when Hopkins is doing more than ever to support the city of Baltimore and the state in its investments in research and education. That is why we respectfully ask that you outright reject the proposed Salinger cuts before you and adopt MICUA's proposal, which, though it provides a dramatic cut to Hopkins, provides full funding to the balance of MICUA institutions. Thank you again for your consideration today.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions for this panel? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I'm calling Sylvia Gonzalez from Loyola, and is President Trainer from Mount St. Mary's. Oh, there you are. And then is Bradford Sims. Great to see you.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith and members of the committee. Thank you for your time here today, and thank you very much for all of the work you do on behalf of Marylanders, and particularly on behalf of students in Maryland pursuing their are afforded opportunity. There we go. Opportunities. Thank you. I'm kind of loud, so hopefully you heard what I was saying before. Today, young people from Maryland are afforded opportunities at the Mount due in part to the Salinger program. We are the largest private employer in Northern Frederick County, providing 781 jobs, and we invest in the area. We partnered with Frederick Health to bring an urgent care center to our campus recently that is open to the public, and we are opening a new graduate school of health professions later this year in the town of Emmitsburg. Since 2016, our student body has grown by 44% and diversified considerably. Our undergraduate population is 45% students of color, and 32% of our students are Pell eligible. Expanded access to a Mount education would not have been possible without the Salinger program. Maryland offers its residents the opportunity to pursue higher education at an institution that is the right fit for them. MICUA members have the highest graduation rates compared to competitors across all demographics, and we graduate our students quickly, which means they start earning faster and stop accumulating debt. We would not be able to accomplish this for your constituents without the Salinger program. We do understand the pressures you're under, and thank you for working through this. We're trying to find a shared middle ground. We urge you to restore the Salinger program formula that has been in place for several decades and add a cap so that no single institution can receive more than 35% of the total funding. This will result in about a 20% reduction to the formula, Selinger funding by formula for MICUA institutions, but versus the drastic 50% reduction that's currently in the BRFA. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Oh, press your button. There you go. Yep.
Smith and members of the House Education and Economic Development Subcommittee. Good afternoon. My name is Silvia Raquel Gonzalez Mendez, a student at Loyola University, Maryland. I am from the 3rd District in Frederick County and participated in this year's MICU Independence Higher Education Day. I stand before you today with a heart full of gratitude and a story that captures the dreams and aspirations of many who, like me, are first-generation Latinas navigating the often complex and challenging path of higher education. I am honored to share my testimony as I am a direct example of the Selinger Grant Program. I come from a family of soldiers. Instead of enlisting in the Army or Navy, as many encouraged me and expected as my path, I decided to apply to college and pursue degrees in psychology and political science. It may sound trite, but I felt a sense of peace and belonging when I first set foot on campus at Loyola. I knew that I belonged here and that I would make history here. And the financial aid package that Loyola provided me allowed me the choice to attend where my heart felt called. So far, I've joined Loyola's Pre-Law Society and have participated in their fall and spring expungement clinics to help translate and offer one-on-one assistance to participants, advising them on legal matters. Additionally, I have been picked to be resident assistant next year for the upcoming class of 2028 and received academic honors in my first full semester as a Loyola student. Growing up in a household where English was not the first language and financial constraints were present, pursuing higher education seemed like an elusive dream. My mom and grandma, immigrants who worked tirelessly to provide for our family, instilled in me the values of hard work, perseverance, and the importance of education. As a first-generation Latina, I carry the torch of hope for those who come after me, proving that with resilience, dedication, and support, barriers can be broken down and dreams can become reality. I ask that you preserve the legislative integrity of the Selinger formula created by the General Assembly over 5 decades ago, reject the current language in the BRFA, and restore the formula to its original design. My journey is a testament to the fact that every investment in education is an investment in the future. And with the help from the committee, from support of the Selinger program, I am committed to paying it forward, ensuring that the flame of opportunity continues to burn brightly for generations to come at Loyola University, Maryland. Thank you for being in the potential of first-generation Latinas like me. Together, we are shaping a future that is rich with diversity, inclusivity, and boundless possibilities.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gonzalez, for your testimony. I know that this is not the last time we're going to hear from you, but I do also want to say that what you may not know is I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college as well. So there's no limit to what you can accomplish. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Good to see you again.
Great to see you again.
I'm Bradford Sims. I'm president of Capital Technology University, which is located in Laurel, Maryland. We're nicely between NSA and NASA, where a lot of our students go to work. We are a majority university at all 3 degree levels, bachelor's, master's, and doctorate. Obviously, we have a slightly different focus from some of our MICUA counterparts, but I echo everything that has been said, or will be said about the Selinger program and support its proposal. For the Selinger money that we use, that we collect, and we use it for the undergraduate students, about 90% of the money is for financial aid, and it's all for undergraduate students. And so with the current cut proposal, Capital Tech will be cut 52%. So let me highlight a few things that those Maryland students would miss out on. So Capital Tech, our focus, of course, is a direct pipeline between our institution and the workforce in Maryland. We have about 80% Maryland students at the undergraduate level and 36% are Pell eligible. We're so confident in the degree programs that we offer for all of our undergraduate students. We guarantee them a minimum starting salary of $52,000 a year. If they do not receive that, we cover their and their parents' quarterly loan payments until they exceed $52,000 a year. We also guarantee all of our undergraduate students that if they don't have a degree, don't have a job in their degree area in 90 days, they can come back for a certificate in another area for free. We can do that because of our high placement rate and industry demand in our market area. Not only the three-letter agencies, government subcontractors, as you can imagine, most stay within Maryland of our undergraduates. We also pride ourselves on our return on investment for our students. We control our cost, make it very affordable. And in a recent report that was issued by Georgetown University, they came out with a report that was called "The First Try at Return on Investment," ranking 4,500 colleges and universities across the United States. We were ranked number 213 out of that ranking for a 20-year net present value return. And last year, Capital Tech was ranked in the Forbes top 500 of ROIs for universities across the nation. Our graduates earn money, and that's true of all of our MICUA University members as well. According to the College Scoreboard, MICUA schools graduates far outperform United States four-year publics and privates in median earnings after graduation. What makes this even more impressive for both Capital Technology and my fellow MICUA members is that we're doing that with students of modest means. Capital Tech is the second-ranked institution in the state of Maryland for economic mobility. The Economic Mobility Index accounts for the price to earnings premium, which measures the average time it takes for students from families earning $30,000 or less to recoup their cost of attaining a credit in combination with the proportion of students from low to moderate income households. 6 of the top 10 schools in the highest 3 tiers of Economic Mobility Index are MICUA institutions. We know how to help low-income students succeed, attain degrees, and climb the economic ladder. We are here to demonstrate to you the incredible value that we offer your constituents as prospective students, as well as the incredible return on investment that we offer the taxpayers of Maryland. Please endorse the MICUA proposal so that Capital Technology University can continue to change the economic fortunes of Marylanders. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions for the panel? Delegate Harris.
Oops. Appreciate it, Madam Chair. So thank you for your testimony. I just want to highlight the importance of capital technology, as he mentioned about the return on investments, as well as, you know, the amount of revenue that can continue to stay in the state of Maryland as we continue to provide for those students there. I'm actually interested to know what that number is, and you probably can't give it right now, what that number is on a yearly basis in terms of revenue of folks staying in Maryland from Capital Technology, doing work in the technology world, because we are in this Maryland area are primed with NSA, Fort Meade, which houses DISA, Defense Information System Agency. So we are primed to have a lot of these folks who go to Capital Technologies and actually turn around and go to schools, go to different organizations right here in the state of Maryland. So I think that has a lot of good value, and I appreciate you highlighting that today.
And I'll just mention on DISA too, as we're the first educational partner with DISA, and they have reserved internships just for our students. But because Capital cannot fill the demand with, you know, DISA's demand, as you can imagine, all the IT and cyber, we do work with them, even providing seminars to universities across the US and try to help them bring in interns and more potential workforce here to Maryland, because we can't do it all, but we're certainly one-on-one with them as a partner, trying to help them out as well.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other questions, thank you for this panel.
Thank you.
I see that Greg Fitzgerald signed up, but I see President Yam, I believe, is here. Great to see you. President Devereaux. Is Lauren Martin from Stevenson? Great. And then is Autumn Custis. Okay, fantastic.
Good afternoon, Chairman Smith. Good to see you, members of the committee. Thank you for your time today. I'm Mary Lou Yam, 14th president of Notre Dame of Maryland University in Baltimore. We were founded in 1895 as the first Catholic women's college in the country to grant the baccalaureate degree. Today, Notre Dame is a comprehensive, gender-inclusive university of approximately just over 1,800 students with a mission to educate leaders to transform the world, build inclusive communities, and to promote social responsibility. We have a long-standing commitment to provide access to higher education for our students. Notre Dame serves an incredibly diverse population of students. 89% of our students are Maryland residents. 51% are individuals of a minority ethnic background. 24% of our students are first generation, and 50% are Pell Grant eligible. We are ranked number 18 by U.S. News in the North Regional category as a top performer in social mobility. And that ranking provides us with a first place for the state of Maryland for colleges in the North Regional group. Our students, as part of our unique curriculum at Notre Dame, are actively engaged in service in our local community via our signature York Road Education and Service Program, which engages our students with K-12 educators and other nonprofit organizations in Greater Baltimore. Notre Dame has a long history of partnering with the state to meet workforce needs. We are a leader in the state in teacher preparation, with Notre Dame School of Education routinely recognized as the largest private provider and top 5 overall of new teacher certifications in the state. As a sector, MICUA institutions produce half of the education degrees in the state of Maryland at the bachelor's level or above. We are also a leader in healthcare preparation programs, including nursing, occupational therapy, the second only in the state, the first private college to have a physician assistant master's program, and the state's only Master of Art Therapy licensure prep program. We are proud of our nursing program that is ranked by U.S. News in the top 3rd in the country. In addition, in the past 10 years, we have graduated 1,800 students with nursing degrees. Notre Dame and the other MICUA institutions support the ambitious agenda outlined in the state's blueprint for Maryland's future. However, we are concerned that a critical component of that plan, the preparation of diverse and highly qualified new teachers, and also the continued professional development of current teachers, will be detrimentally impacted by the significant reductions proposed to the Sellinger program in the governor's budget. The proposed calculation of the Sellinger formula in the BRFA results in a 46% reduction of Notre Dame's funding dollars. This is the 3rd largest percent reduction of any MICUA institution. I can't begin to tell you how devastating this reduction would be to our campus. For a university like Notre Dame with a limited endowment to fall back on, such a significant reduction will almost certainly result in reductions to need-based financial aid for our students. And as mentioned, 89% of them are from Maryland, job losses, or some combination thereof. Not only are these cuts devastating, but they simply couldn't come at a worse time for our students. As this committee is aware, the federal government has worked to simplify the FAFSA form, which is very helpful. However, for the incoming 24-25 class, the impacts have been devastating, with FAFSA completion down nearly 45% nationally and 39% down in Maryland. With all the uncertainty in federal and state financial aid, institutions need to be able to provide students with some level of confidence and certainty that their financial aid will remain stable. We respectfully request the committee consider the MICUA proposal and allow for a fair and equitable distribution of the Sellinger formula so that we can all continue the great work in helping Maryland students who are most in need go on and contribute to our workforce and talent in the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, I'm Kent Devereaux from Goucher College, president of Goucher College in Towson, Maryland. Very similar to my colleague from Notre Dame, Goucher College today has an extremely diverse population that has changed dramatically over the last 10 years. In 2014, we had a 14% non-white BIPOC population on campus. Today, it is 49%. In 2014, we had 6% of our students were first-gen students. Today, it is 34%. Our Pell Grant population is 37%. Now, we are somewhat different than Notre Dame in that the majority of our students come from out of state. 60% come from outside Maryland, so only 40% within Maryland, 25% from Baltimore City itself. But 10 years after graduation, 53% of those students stay in Maryland. So we are a net importer of talent to the state, which is a significant component. We've worked very hard to build our graduate programs as well as our undergraduate programs. And today is about 1,000 of both undergraduate and graduates. But 85% of our graduate students are in our education program. So at this time, when we're going through this uncertainty around the FAFSA delay, which is affecting all of our students in all the systems, public, community colleges, and private colleges across the nation, to face a cut such as this with the Sellinger program would dramatically impact our college in very, very specific ways. 90% of our funds go to Maryland students for financial aid, but the 10% that doesn't goes to a very specific program. 3 years ago, we started a program, it's called the Launch Network. And the Launch Network was built upon some of the success that our colleague, now retired, President Freeman Hrabowski had setting up the Meyerhoff Scholarship Program at UMBC. So when I moved to Maryland 5 years ago to take this job, one of the first calls I made was to Freeman. I said, how did you do this? And really learned from the best. So we set up a program 3 years ago called the Launch Network. And what we do is we focus very specifically on first-gen students because we noticed a big disparity. The 2-year retention on first-gen students was 61%, or our general population was about 80%. Now, 2 years into this program, we'll know by this next year, the full complete 3 years, but we've seen consistently in those first 2 years of launching this program, retention on those first-gen students go from 61% to 81%, 2 years in a row, a 20% increase. Sellinger funding has made part of that possible. But more importantly than that, it has allowed us to basically meet the need for all of our Pell Grant students, Maryland residents across the board, which is today is 37%. But I just looked at our incoming class, and that could be as high as 43% going this next year. That is incredibly important because I can look across the street at Towson University, a state fully funded public university, and our students graduate with less student debt than the public across the street. We have an outcomes that outperform the publics in many cases in terms of 4-year and 6-year graduation rates. And I think more importantly, the Sellinger funding and the funding formula is so important because we don't do it alone. We do not think the privates stand on their own. The biggest increase we've seen in our incoming students in the last 3 years, a tripling, has been community college transfers. So the students who are coming in are almost all getting Sellinger funding because that program is absolutely essential to us. And where do our students go after they graduate? UMBC, College Park, and Johns Hopkins. These are students who are really taking advantage of a tripartite higher education system in Maryland. It's one of our strengths, and the Sellinger is a foundational aspect of that program. So I want to thank the legislature, the committee, and many of you for your support for Sellinger over the years. This has been an ongoing really central to principle to Maryland and the strength of our higher education system. And I know there are those critics who say, why are we funding private education? I've led institutions in states where there's no funding. I've led states where there's much more funding going to privates. And I can tell you those states that I come from that invest in higher education are the same ones that are seeing economic growth in their states. Very thankful for the support and the committee's recommendation. our recommendation to basically support the MICUA proposal, which we think is fair and equitable, still results in a reduction in an incredibly tight budget year. We understand that. We heard some of the stories today, and we hear a lot of the stories. You have a very, very tough job, but we feel that the MICUA proposal is a fair and equitable way to address this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and the committee members, thank you for the opportunity to address you all today. My name is Lauren Martin, and I am the president of the Student Government Association at Stevenson University. I'm from Carroll County, and I live in District 42C, and I had the privilege to attend the MICUA Independent Higher Education Day to thank our delegates for supporting the Joseph A. Selinger program. Today, I want to thank you all for the past support of this program and ask that you continue to preserve the legislative integrity of the Selinger formula created by the General Assembly more than 50 years ago. The Selinger program awarded financial aid to an average of 13,760 Maryland students annually. I'm one of those 13,760 students, and Stevenson has provided me with the personal growth that I didn't even know was possible. I became heavily involved in the Student Government Association, our admissions department, and our student life and leadership programming. Not only have I made deep roots in this university and made friends, learned how to be a professional, and ultimately succeed beyond our campus, but I found my forever career path in higher education. This is something that I believe I would have never come across if I had to choose between affording an education and earning one. Because of the support I received through the Selinger program, I was able to focus on my academics and my extracurriculars, and that is something that every student after me deserves. All of these students testifying today are the proof of the success of this program, and it is crucial that there is a continuous preservation in the Selinger formula to allow every MICUA school to grant their students the opportunity to afford higher education. So thank you all for your time today and for your continual support of the Selinger program. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. You are a fellow elected official, so great to see you.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith and members of the subcommittee. My name is Autumn Custis, and I'm a senior at Goucher College, majoring in political science and religion and justice. First off, I'd like to thank you all for your past support of the Selinger program. And I just want to tell you a bit about my journey into college and why I believe it still needs to be supported. So over my 4 years at Goucher, I have received over $27,000 from the Selinger Fund. And this money, in addition to many other grants and scholarships, was the difference between me going to college or me not, as a first generation student like you, Chair Smith. And I was I am a part of the Maryland Scholars Program, which is the iteration before the launch program. And I'm from District 38A, sorry, and graduated from Chrisfield High School. I was only one of 4 students to attend a formal college or university, with many of my classmates believing that there was no way to afford college. Like them, I also felt that way, but decided I needed a college degree and to leave Chrisfield, Maryland for a little bit. And I applied to various private and public state schools within the state, and I chose to attend Goucher, which was my first choice, for many different reasons. It was a small school like my high school. Everyone was so welcoming, but to be honest, and also because I received a full ride. So that money went towards that. So I want to talk about my love for Goucher real quick. I love Goucher so much. I've dipped my toes in almost everything except for athletics. And I'm a resident assistant. I'm the president of our student programming board. I'm an arch presidential diplomat. So, And I do so many other things. And I would not have been able to get those opportunities at all if it wasn't for, in part, the Sellinger Fund. So the image of private institutions has been, you know, for trust fund babies or more affluent students, but that's not correct anymore. And I'm living proof of that. And so is my colleague. So I visited some of your offices last Wednesday for the MICUA Higher Education Day, and I'm once again asking you to preserve the legislative integrity of the Sellinger Fund, created by the General Assembly more than 5 decades ago, and reject the current language in the BRFA and restore the formula to its original design. Thank you so much for your time and your continued support.
Thank you, Autumn, for your testimony. I just love to hear how involved you are in campus. I always tell young people I used to work at a high school, and people would say, I'm bored. I'm like, that's because you're boring. You got to get involved. The more things you get involved in, whether it's high school or college, the less bored you'll be. There's something for you. So I'm glad that you took the opportunity to really explore that. Thank you. Thank this panel for their testimony. Are there any questions? Not Crisfield High? Come on. Yeah, not every day someone from Crisfield High.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, we've had 2 from the lower shore. 2, not 1, but 2.
But 2.
Girl, how you been? How you folks? Everybody good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing as we can.
Right on.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
We would.
I did not recognize that. I'm just talking
Thank
to
you, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you
Of course. Well, that concludes.
for the interruption from across the
I'm
table.
respecting you. If you have anything else to add, sir. Okay.
Who's doing?
Happy to see you today.
Right on, you too.
Very good, very good. So there's no additional questions. Thank you for this panel. We just have one last witness. Jubelo Oyeniran. And please correct pronunciation if I was incorrect. Great to see you.
Thank you. It's Jubelo Oyeniran. All right. So thank you. And I would first like to start off by saying thank you for your past support of the Sellinger program. Chair Smith, members of the House Education and the Economic Developmental Program. My name is Jubelo Oyeniran. I'm a junior accounting major at Stevenson University. I'm also pursuing a master's degree in forensic accounting. At Stevenson University, I've served in the Student Government Association, so I'm under Lauren. For the past 3 years now, my entire time at Stevenson University, I serve as a Fellowship of Christian Athletes leader. I have participated in NCAA track and field at Stevenson University. I have served as an ambassador for Stevenson University at several prestigious case competitions, research competitions, and conferences, one of which is coming up, the IDEA Scholars Program at the Ivy League, Wharton, University of Pennsylvania. I am co-founder of a pre-seed stage startup called Kairos. Now, when I reflect on my story, the Nigerian boy who started through the ESOL program at Baltimore County Public Schools in District 11A, I went through high school doing the needful, getting straight A's, being involved and doing everything. I didn't know how I was going to pay for college. I got into every school I applied for, including the College Parks, the Hopkins. What made the decision? As much as I love Stevenson's small class sizes, the family environment, the ultimate decision was the Presidential Fellowship, which is a full tuition scholarship which was given to me. And I've been able to develop and I've been able to be the person I am today because of that program. Now, when you think about the cut that's happening with the Sellinger program, who's been impacted by that cut? It's people who look like me, low-income students, underrepresented students. And now Maryland has been endorsed as the tech hub for innovation, right? And I'm sure you'd agree with me when we say the only way to predict the future is to create it. Now, what kindness funding is doing is kind of hungry people like myself. I mean, I came into college saying I'm going to do everything. I'm going to learn and get the most from the experience. Now, when you have people who have my background, what we want to do is make an impact. And we don't necessarily graduate looking for jobs. We create jobs. And we all know what creating jobs means for the state. More revenue, more tax revenue. So with that, I'm saying that you please preserve the legislative integrity of the Sellinger Fund. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I don't know if you know a gentleman named Jaden Thornton. He's an alum of Stevenson.
Yes, he's a JD.
Yeah, he had a fluoride to Stevenson and a fluoride to law school as well. But I'm good friends with his mom, who was actually just here educating and advocating last week on some other unrelated matters. But I can see that there are stellar folks still participating in that, I guess, mock trial, kind of advocacy program. I just want to again thank you for you sharing your personal background with us and for the leadership you're providing on your campus. And are there any questions for the gentleman? Seeing none, thank you for coming here and providing your testimony. To all those that remain, he was the last witness today. And I think it's just important for you all to know that for us, we all see education as key, not only to the individual futures you shared with us, but to the economic vitality of our state. We're not competing with other states, we're competing with other countries, we're competing globally. And your institutions are a part of the larger higher education fabric that has made Maryland such a great place, not only to live, but to learn. And so I want to say thank you, not just for the education you provide on your campuses, but the fact that you're anchor institutions within communities that you are housed in as well. And so there are things you didn't even share today that I know you do, for the communities that are situated nearby. So on behalf of the committee, thank you. We hear you. Times are very challenging and tough, but I definitely think that the last witness spoke about revenues. You can also speak about revenues with people that you need to talk to as well. So thank you for being here today. That concludes the budget hearing for today. We're now transitioning into a voting session. We have two bills before us. Neither of them have amendments. We'll start with House Bill 811. Could you read the synopsis?
Yep. House Bill 811 establishes the Financial Wellbeing Pilot Program at the University of Maryland College Park and Morgan State University. The program's purpose is to provide comprehensive financial guidance, support, and coaching to help students facing significant personal financial burdens, complex student loan debts, or high levels of financial anxiety, or lacking in financial literacy, knowledge, or skills. This is a pilot program that terminates in 2027. There are no amendments.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting House Bill 811, say aye. Any opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Moving on to House Bill 901.
House Bill 901 authorizes MHEC to waive the minimum semester hour requirements for part-time senatorial or delegate scholarships on the request of an applicant with a documented disability. There are no amendments.
Is there a motion to vote? Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. That ends today's voting session.